I've said for years that I would rather go where I'm treated best rather than stay and fight. But apparently, some Americans don't feel that way, and a new article talks about how many Americans are ready to fight it out to the grim death. I'm going to tell you why and why I believe they're wrong. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson, the author of this best-selling book on Amazon and the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And for me, going where you're treated best, those are the 5 magic words, is all about running to something, not from something. Seeing the world today and how there are so many opportunities, seeing how some countries have more freedom, seeing how perhaps the country where you live has declining freedoms. The government is increasingly making life difficult, raising taxes, imposing new regulations or burdens on you, and saying, you know what? I want to go to that place with better weather. And, people are okay with moving from California to Florida to save on taxes, or from, Wisconsin to Arizona, if we're using the United States as an example, to get better weather. People do that all the time. But when I say maybe the best opportunities are in another country, people, they bristle at the idea. And there's a new article from The Hill, thehill.com, which says 47% of Republicans, this is in the United States, say time will come to take the law into their own hands. This is from a poll according to The Hill. And I have a lot of things to say about this. The article from The Hill says about 47% of Republicans believe that a time will come when, quote unquote, patriotic Americans have to take the law into their own hands, according to a George Washington University poll on Americans' faith in election systems and democratic values. The GW Politics poll, conducted among more than 1,700 registered voters from June 4th to June 23rd, found that support for principles like free and fair elections, free speech, and peaceful protest were nearly unanimous among Democratic and Republican voters. Approximately 55% of GOP respondents, however, said they support the potential use of force to preserve the, quote-unquote, traditional American way of life, compared to just 15% of Democrats. Now, I know some of you watching call yourself patriots, and I have no problem with that. I think that's fantastic. I left the U.S. because I didn't want to live in the U.S., and we can have a mutual respect for the fact that the place that you want to live is somewhere that I didn't want to live, and that's fine. You can stay there if you like it, if you don't mind paying the high taxes. If you feel comfortable there, you should do that. Go where you're treated best means where you are treated best. We're merely here to open up your eyes and say, maybe there is something better. You get to make the final call. But one thing that's concerned me in the last number of months is, so many Americans in particular, now, they're not the only country that say this, but so many Americans in particular say our country is the best in the world, and we've talked from day one here that there is really no statistic that backs it up other than the prison populations or shootings at malls per capita or what have you, some very unfortunate stats. But Americans say this is the best country in the world, and listen, it may be best to you, but it's not best on any statistical measure, really, to the extent that even anything can be the best. But what I'm hearing now is, and this poll and this article backs it up, people are saying, hey, we don't have free and fair elections. We don't have free speech. We don't feel like we can peacefully protest. And I think, some of those things may be true. Can you peacefully protest? Is it an even playing field? You can read the headlines and you can decide. But if you believe, how can you believe your country is the best and then say, hey, we have all these problems? How can you call other countries? How can you tell me, Andrew, why would you want to be a citizen of a banana republic? Why would you want to give up your U.S. citizenship and go to these tiny little, corrupt countries? And then on the other hand, you turn around and say, we don't have free and fair elections. We don't have free speech anymore. We don't have the ability to protest. You really can't have it both ways. And so at a certain point, you need to make a decision. And I think too many people, and we made a whole video on this, which type are you? If you believe you're going to vote your way back to the way you want things, you are fighting a losing battle. And I almost think some people are ramping up. Some people like losing. I think almost some people like the idea of being in the minority and having to fight and having to be scrappy and having to hope for something coming up. But 55% of Republicans say they will support the potential use of force to preserve traditional American way of life. Not sure what that means, but what I can tell you is America is a concept, not a place, and you can create it wherever you want. So you can do that anywhere. Only 9% of Democrats, this is the article, agreed to the statement that a time will come when patriotic Americans have to take the law into their own hands. This word patriotic, I mean, if you're patriotic, that's great. You should use the word. Patriotic seems like it's applying to a lot of things these days. It's applying to things where anything just and right is patriotic, and anything that's not is not patriotic. And I don't think that's really what it means. 85% of Democrats expressed trust in local election officials, with 76% saying the same of state officials, much lower numbers for GOP voters. University researchers measured a drop in Republicans' confidence in the 2022 elections compared to the period leading up to the 2020 elections. Just 28% of Republicans, saying that they were confident in the upcoming midterm elections compared to 46% before the 2020 general elections. Republican doubt in the integrity of U.S. elections has been growing in large part due to, this is the article, unsupported claims from former President Trump and his allies that widespread voter fraud resulted in the inaccurate 2020 election results. That's the article speaking, so that people who, like, when we do an interview, they think that, like, I don't know why you have this guy on, like as if I agree with every single thing that someone I interview says. And the article goes on and on about election fraud, but what people think is. But I come back to the title of the article. 47% will take the law into their own hands and will use potential force. Now, my question to you is, what kind of a life do you want to live? To me, the American dream that people talk about, the traditional American values, aren't these things about a certain amount of peace and a certain amount of prosperity? Now, I mean, the United States has been at war for practically its entire existence. But, isn't that what you're trying to accomplish in life? And do you want to live a life that is miserable? Your country, if you believe this, is being lost. And if we talk about the stories all the time, mainly from an economic perspective, taxes are going up, politicians want to give people stuff for free. If you're a wealthy person, you are a parasite, you're the devil, whatever the case may be, you're a tax cheat, says Elizabeth Warren, what have you. That is the culture speaking. The economics are a byproduct of the culture speaking and people saying, we don't want what I'm guessing some of these traditional American values are. And it's picking up steam to the fact that corporations are buying into it, and it's just becoming the culture. The culture is changing. And especially in a large country like the United States, you do not turn on a dime. That is not just change. People don't just come to their senses, as you might call it, overnight. These things are happening. There's a momentum. And the idea to me that you're going to take the law into your own hands. First of all, if you believe that the United States is a country of laws, then the laws made by whomever are the laws. And so taking the law into your own hands is not the law. This is like when people say, I'll leave when things get bad enough. I mean, when is it bad enough to justify, what some of these people want to do, some kind of insurrection? When does it get bad enough? And I really think the answer, quite frankly, is it will never get bad enough. Now, again, I'm not here to preach. I'm here to proselytize. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong. I am here to say, listen, here are the options. Here are some statistics. Here's what's happening. And here's how you can go where you're treated best. And you are free. Listen, obviously, 330 plus million people have said the United States is where they want to live. They voted with their feet. Whether they like it or not, that's where they're living. So to some extent, that's where they want to be. To me, this idea that you are going to be, in a shootout on your roof, that you're going to be taking on the military. I mean, aren't these people the same ones that love the military, and then you're going to turn on them? I just don't understand any of this. And quite frankly, if this is where you think things are going, why don't you find somewhere else? Now, again, you can't have on one hand, it's the best place in the world, everything's going great, and then on the other hand say, well, maybe we'll have an armed, incursion. Really? And is that how you want to live? I'll tell you where I'll be. I will be peacefully living somewhere overseas. I will have the ability to live and travel to multiple countries. I will have homes in multiple countries. I'll have my finances distributed. I'll have my business distributed so that even if something happens to where the way of life changes in one place, I will not be adversely affected in a big way. I will be very diversified, and I will be personally able to be diversified with my person and where I'm able to go. And at the very least, if you believe things are happening, you should have a plan B. You should have a second passport. You should have a home overseas where you can go, where you can feel comfortable going. You should have the ability to live somewhere else. You should have some money to go to start over. I am not a doomsday person. I'm not an apocalypse person. I do believe you can read the tea leaves, and I've been doing it and studying, in a sense, since I was a child. Reading about moving overseas and reading about how the U.S. and Western society would become more and more of what it is today, which is anti-wealth and all the things we talk about here. So at the very least, you should have a plan B. Nobody ever ran into huge problems putting some of their money in a bank in Singapore, or putting some of their money in a bank in Switzerland or Panama or anywhere else. So if you're an American, you file the proper forms, you report it, you don't hide your money. But the fact of putting some money in Singapore, that's not going to be your downfall. It's just very simple diversification. You should be doing that at the very least, so that if this happens, you can get out. As Robert Kiyosaki said at our conference, Nomad Capitalist Live, where are you going to go in 3 days? Where can you get to in 3 days? And where can you and your family be safe? And so, rather than taking the law into your own hands, why don't you just go somewhere and live what I'll be living, which is, if this ever happens, and I'm not convinced, listen, who knows what could happen? I guess if I've seen anything in the last 25 years, as in the last 1 year, I guess anything could happen. But I will not be affected in the same way that someone who is living in Montana or Arizona or Florida or wherever will be. And I think that's what we should all aspire to, is knowing that we have multiple options, that we have the ability to protect ourselves. I do not want to be living a life where I am, fighting for my life. I want to be living a nice life. And the United States, if they don't share your values, if the traditional American way of life as you view it is gone, what are you fighting for? Why don't you create it somewhere else? Because the ancestors, the founding fathers that you hold in such high regard, those people, people in your own family, came from somewhere else. They came to build a better life. And the deal was never, this is going to be the perfect place forever. The deal was, this is the place to be now. And there can be another decision made at some point in the future. I'm going to go somewhere else. I do not want you to take the law into your own hands or use force. This is just ridiculous. And quite frankly, I don't think many people will. I think they're going to stay around. They're going to bemoan things getting worse and worse. And this is why I said there are two types of people: those who sit around and who watch. And listen, happy to have you. There are people who watch, and there are people who dream and fantasize, and then ultimately say, "No, I'm not a traitor. I'm going to keep all my eggs in this one basket." And then there are those who, at the very least, say, "Let me protect myself. Even if I stay living in the U.S., I want to have a safety, a raft, a safety boat." And I think that is what is a lot happier of a life than this taking the law into your own hands. So people ask, Andrew, how do I get the most out of Nomad Capitalist? How do I begin my Nomad Capitalist journey? The first thing people do is they start right where you're at. They watch YouTube, they listen to podcasts, they read articles at nomadcapitalist.com. We've spent years creating thousands of pieces of free content so that you can get the vibe from someone who's actually done this, from someone who's actually been in your shoes. What they'll do next, they'll get a copy of the book. You can find it on Amazon. It costs a few bucks, and while it's not going to give you all the secrets, it's going to, again, give you more of the vibe. You're going to learn a lot of the things that I've learned. You're going to learn some strategies you can employ, and you're going to get a lot further in your journey. From there, if you are the 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur investor, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. You can click Become a Client. We're pretty busy these days, but we have availability to help a limited number of people who want to create a holistic plan, something that I think is so important. So if you want to do that, go to nomadcapitalist.com, click Become a Client, learn more about how it works and how we can help you.